If you are just joining us for this special edition of the Fox Report, today President Obama made his case for military action against Syria and the government there. Now we wait, as he says he wants to, for a vote in Congress for authorization. Earlier on the program, I spoke with Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. My first question was, did the president say what you wanted to hear?
I'm going to say something that some people may be surprised by, but I'm proud of President Obama, and, I don't say that lightly. I've been a fierce critic of the president, but I'm proud of him today for obeying the Constitution and seeking congressional authority to go to war. I still disagree with him, over whether we should go to war in Syria, and I'll vote against dragging us into the Syrian civil war. But I am proud of him for following the Constitution and saying, you know what, the president doesn't have the unilateral authority. Really, Congress has this authority, and he's going to seek it.
I had read that you have told this president how you feel about Syria. Do you think any of those conversations, or perhaps you can point to something that would have gotten him to this point where he would say, okay, I'm going to go to Congress first?
I think it may be me and 80% of the public who've been telling all of their representatives that they want Congress to vote on this. Really, this is the way it was intended to be. James Madison wrote in the Federalist Papers, he said, you know what? The executive is the branch most prone to go to war. Therefore, we gave the power to Congress. The Constitution vested that power in Congress to have some checks and balances, to slow things down, to let emotions die down and have a significant and real debate over whether or not it's in our national security interest, whether it be good for our country. My problem with the Syrian civil war is I'm not sure that either side really will end up being friendly to America and that it's worth either American lives or American bombs getting involved in the Syrian civil war, where I'm not sure whether either victory will be good for America.
And I hear your concern there, and I know how politics can happen in Washington. So in the end, how will you vote on Syria?
Unless they can overcome two ironies, I couldn't vote to involve us. The first irony is there are about 2 million Christians, and they seem to be on the other side of the war. They tend to side with Assad. And the other irony is that al-Qaeda is on the side of the Islamic rebels. And I just can't see America getting involved with Islamic rebels to really be fighting against Christians on the other side. So there are two great ironies that are difficult for me to overcome. And there's going to have to be a lot of explaining for me to change my position.
What do you think will happen in the Senate with the vote?
The Senate tends to be more, I think, or let's just say the best way to say this is less. They don't seem to show a significant reluctance to go to war, I guess is the best way to put it. But the House is a much more, I guess, good barometer of the people and the grassroots. The House, I think the vote will be very close, and I think there's a chance he doesn't win in the House. And I would like to see what happened to the British Parliament happen in the United States, and that is that the people, through their representatives, say, enough's enough, we're not ready for another war, there is no clear-cut ally to America in this war, and we're not going to get involved. And so we'll see. I think the Senate, though, will rubber stamp what the president wants, but I think the House is another question.
Senator Paul, if we see the House and Senate, either one of them vote this down, can you stop the president from acting unilaterally?
Well, the great thing about it is he's acknowledging, and, when he ran as a candidate in 2007, 2008, both he and Joe Biden said specifically that, no president can unilaterally go to war without congressional authority. Now, today he tempered his words some, and he said, well, I've got the authority to do whatever I want, but I'm choosing to go to Congress. Well, I don't see it that way. I don't believe he does have the authority, but presidents have in the past usurped this authority. The bottom line is once he comes to Congress, if it's voted down in Congress, I believe that he will be stopped. I will do everything in my power to stop and to have the vote go against involving us in Syria. Because I see some of the ramifications really being such that they may be bad for America, bad for Israel. I think there are a lot of things that could wind up happening in the Middle East with our involvement that would be unintended and may make the situation worse.
Before I let you go, September was already a very crowded month for all the things you have to do. Just to tick them down, you've got the debt ceiling, the farm bill, the NSA, and the ever-looming implementation of Obamacare, and now Syria on top of that. How will that impact what you have to do come September 9th?
I think nothing's more important than making the decision whether to send young men and women to war. And I think this trumps all other issues. And it is incredibly important that we have a free and open debate in Congress before we get involved with another war. So we have a lot of important things coming up. They'll all get accomplished. But I think a meaningful debate on whether or not we send young men and women to war is very important for our country.
Any chance you'd come back early to Washington for this?
Well, you know, there is talk of that already, and I've had rumors from my staff about having some committee hearings this week and some different briefings. I had briefings today by phone. We'll see. I don't know what the conclusion of that'll be.
And for reaction to that, as lawmakers go on the record during these 2 hours of Fox Report, joining me now, former UN Ambassador John Bolton and Fox News contributor. Ambassador, you have a very vocal reaction to what Senator Rand Paul just said. What is it?
Well, his reading of the Constitution is very badly flawed, and I don't think he listened carefully to what President Obama said today. President Obama did not say that he had to go to Congress because of the Constitution. He said expressly the opposite. He said he had the authority, but he was choosing to do so. And I think that reflects a long line of presidential actions over the entire course of our history. The congressional power is simply to, quote, declare war. It's not to make war. And that was a choice the framers at the Constitutional Convention faced. They had seen the Continental Congress try to make war in the Revolution. And in fact, one of the primary reasons we don't speak with a British accent is that George Washington was capable of fending the Congress off. So this is a very important point. Trying to limit the president's authority as commander-in-chief would imperil the United States. The president's made a dubious choice here by opening this up from his own political point of view. Maybe he felt he had to do it, but he was under no constitutional constraints.
So you take issue there with what Senator Rand Paul said, but do you agree, though, in his assessment that the president had to, and maybe politically had to, go to Congress to get authorization?
Well, it's always a political choice, but I think the president has mishandled this for well over a year, beginning with the red line statement. So the box that he's in is a box the president himself created, and the irony here is that he's now trying to get Congress to bail him out of his own problems. And I think because of the importance the president will put on this, I think it's quite likely Congress will vote to authorize force, in part simply to put the responsibility back on the president. That is a very, very bad way to make policy, especially since Congress will be debating a resolution authorizing force, and that means Congress will get to amend it. And I don't even want to think about what may emerge from that process.
Well, that's an interesting point. You know, the president said today that the UN has dragged its feet on reacting to the use of chemical weapons against citizens inside Syria. Do you think that's true?
Well, look, the United Nations is nothing but an aggregation of its member states. And the fact is the member states are divided. Russia and China have flown political cover for Syria for 2.5 years. They've already vetoed 3 separate sets of sanctions resolutions, gave every indication that they would veto any resolution that authorized the use of force against Syria. So it is a problem, I think, with the Obama administration's own understanding of what's going on in Syria. For 2.5 years trying to negotiate with Russia to ease Assad out of power, which was never going to happen. I don't understand how they could be surprised that the Russians would threaten veto against another resolution in the Security Council.
We will talk more with Ambassador Bolton as Fox News continues to cover the latest reaction to how the U.S. could respond in Syria. Sir, sit by. We'll be right back. And we are back with the former UN Ambassador John Bolton to the United Nations. You know, Ambassador, I'm curious. You have said before that we shouldn't even be focused on Syria. And as we face this crisis, I would ask, well, what should our focus be?
Well, I think our focus should be on Iran. I think the nuclear weapons program that has led Iran to be very, very close to having a deliverable nuclear weapon, something it's been after for 20 years, really puts the Syrian conflict into its proper context. This is a civil war, but it's also a surrogate war between the Shia Persian-led forces on the one hand and the Sunni Arab forces on the other. And so dealing with Iran here really would change the fundamental nature of this conflict. The Assad regime would not be in power today if Iran, over these past 2.5 years, had not continued to finance it, to arm it, to give it Revolutionary Guards personnel, and to unleash Hezbollah from Lebanon into the conflict. Russia's also been a problem, but it's been primarily Iran. So if we had focused on Iran much earlier, Syria would look a lot different.
Do you think we'll be forced to?
No, I don't think the president's going to focus on Iran. He still thinks that he can negotiate with Iran over its nuclear weapons program, even today, when he could have made Iran a major focus of his remarks and his request for an authorization to use force. He simply talked in general terms about proliferation. He doesn't want to say anything unkind about the Ayatollahs because he still thinks, contrary to fact, that he can negotiate with them.
Before I let you go, there's a new person in your old job now, Samantha Power. She was absent for a key point in all the talks at the UN about Syria, on vacation earlier, we're told, personal time. But back on the job now, what exactly is her job with all of this?
Well, I've been trying to think what President Obama could have in mind with the inevitable delay that his decision to ask Congress for authority meant. And I think one possible explanation is that he thinks he needs time to build up enough international support to get some kind of legitimacy from the UN Security Council. I don't think that's going to happen, but he may be hoping that the UN inspector's report will give him some solace. He may hope that the Arab League tomorrow will support the use of force. He may just be hoping against hope that something will turn around. I think it's a waste of time, but I think that's what the action could be in New York.
Ambassador John Bolton, thank you very much for helping us round out 2 hours of Fox Report tonight, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you.